let's talk about this Georgia runoff, because obviously, like, when we're trying to predict what a Biden administration is going to be like, the composition of the Senate is going to be pretty important, and we don't yet know. So we have these two runoffs that are coming, and they're not that far away. What would you like to see, either state Democrats, Biden, his surrogates? What should the strategy be to raise the odds of succeeding in one or both of those runoffs?
Well, there's a really important fact that we all need to remember when it comes to these southern states. I'm from South Carolina, so I know firsthand. It's not a welcome thing for Georgia voters when they see a lot of outside influence coming into a state to influence and nationalize a race. I think we saw that a little bit with what happened with Jamie Harrison running against Lindsey Graham over in South Carolina. I think that was an element of that. I think we have to be very careful as people who want to flip the Senate to make sure that this is a race for Georgians, about Georgian issues. But I think at the same time, we need to get Georgians, Georgia Democrats and those fighting these two races, the resources they need to be competitive and to win. I'm very confident in the team and the organization that Stacey Abrams has put together with Fair Fight and others on the ground down there. And I think our job should be to stay out, keep our distance, but help them get the resources they need to win. And I think they can do it.
I wonder, all else being equal, whether the fact that Georgia has flipped to blue, assuming votes aren't thrown out and all of that, it has finally flipped and it is blue. And the Democrats, in theory, could be motivated to want to provide for their newly elected president-elect a Senate that will actually let him pass literally anything. If that can outweigh or overpower sort of Trumpism's last stand, the idea that this is what they can do. And so far, Trump is playing along, saying that the Republicans need to be elected to stop Biden from being an effective president. What do you think about those two countervailing forces?
Well, I think Donald Trump, the person, is only interested in what benefits him. So as long as what's happening on the ground in Georgia helps his ego, helps move his profile forward post-presidency, he's going to play ball. The second he doesn't see any value in that, he's going to move on, and that may be in a week, or it may be a few days before the election. It may not happen at all. What these candidates on the Republican side have really tried to do is link themselves to Donald Trump and that base that he very successfully turned out on November 3rd. And so I think a lot of this push and pull and this game that's being played is all about keeping that base, ginned up and motivated to turn out again on November 3rd, on January 5th, because if they don't, there's no way Republicans will win these two Senate races. When you look at the numbers, Democrats obviously solidly behind these two candidates, independents largely breaking for these candidates. The math is in our favor going into this race, as long as we can turn out our voters.
And what did you think, in terms of things that could potentially, shake up the race? In theory, we could have had a real debate that, at least between Jon Ossoff and Perdue, is not going to happen, with Perdue saying that he's just not going to show up. Apparently, there are plans to have an empty podium in place. What do you think about that decision?
Well, if I were David Perdue, I wouldn't show up either. Jon Ossoff cleaned his clock during that debate, and then we saw him pull out of the final debate just before the election on November 3rd, so he could appear with Donald Trump at a rally to get the base riled up to turn out. So, I don't expect that to change. I think Georgians can see through that. And Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue have not just bad political records to defend going into January 5th. They've got some serious criminal allegations against them that have to be addressed, and that I think Georgians are taking into consideration when it comes to who they want to represent them in the US Senate going forward.
Yeah, and we sort of acknowledge there that it's this big thing that Georgia has flipped, and Biden was successful in turning Arizona blue as well. I know that we don't have the final numbers. There are still literally millions of votes to be cast, and we're going to spend the next year or two trying to learn as much as we can from what happened in this election. But what are some of the lessons that so far you're taking away? Things that you think it's important that people don't miss about the way the election played out?
One of the things I've been really disappointed to see is people sort of pointing fingers inside the progressive space at, what caused some people to win and others to lose, and, progressives versus centrists and all of that. I think what we saw is that a progressive message is a winning message. And I think that's what got Joe Biden over the top by turning out progressives in big cities across the country where these votes really mattered, like Philadelphia and Atlanta and other places. So I don't buy into this narrative that we have to be in the center to win. I think it's actually the opposite. The more we can excite progressives in our base, the better we do. And I think that's the only reason we were able to offset this very large turnout of Trump's base on the other side. If we had been playing to the middle and not talking about things that progressives care about for the last year and a half, Joe Biden would not be the president-elect today. And so I think that's the big lesson we need to take away this is don't move to the middle and try to become Republican light, vanilla candidates running that don't look much different than the Republicans. Be who we are, run as progressives, be proud of that, stand up for it. Don't fight, don't fight on their turf, fight on our turf. And we saw Democrats who did that win. And I think Joe Biden fits that category.
I think great advice, as we do the early prep for the midterms. Definitely, I couldn't agree more. Zeke Stokes, as always, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, John.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.